Hey everyone, it's Kong again with another episode of Should You Summon? As always, of course, what I'm going to be presenting is high-level overviews using these 4 criteria to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. How these characters fit into your team, whether they unlock any bonds, what kind of content they get used for, and their future availability. So let's get right into this Destiny banner featuring Emilia, Rozenciel, and Licorice, running from June 17th to the 30th. As a Destiny banner, the first SSR that you pull is guaranteed to be one of these 3 that you don't already have. After you do draw that first SSR from the banner, or if you already have all 3 of these characters, then the banner is treated like a normal raid up and you're able to start summoning off-banner heroes. Okay, let's get started with Emilia. Emilia is a tank who converts her magic defense to her attack. She has a revive in her talent, takes both physical and magical attacks for her guarded allies, and can counterattack at 2 range. With her unique hammer, as long as her conversion is up, she can actually counterattacks at any range. Like many tanks, her 3-cost skill is an improved version of her guard skill. When she revives with it, she goes back up to 100% hit points, and she gains some additional physical damage reduction. It also comes with a command aura that reduces critical damage for nearby allies. She's a member of Princess Alliance, buffed by Luna, Shelfaniel, and Christiane, and Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhard, Leon, Lance, and Rozenciel. And that's kind of the thing right there. When Christiane comes out in October as the shiny new Princess Alliance faction buffing tank, she pretty much replaces Emilia. For bonds, Emilia doesn't currently unlock any other character's bonds, so no real big use for her there. And for her own bonds, she needs Vargas for her defensive bond, which is what matters, and Young Jessica for her attack bond. For content in PvE, in the Eternal Temple she's on faction for Leviar, where she's not really useful, and Valkyrie, where she's maybe useful as an expensive Vargas replacement. She's also on faction against Sleipnir and Needhog in Ancient Beckoning, but she doesn't really get used in those fights either. She's fine. Like so many things in this game, if she's the tank you happen to end up with early, and if you like her, then you roll with it, and you build her up, and she'll do the job for you. Being able to revive and counter at range and sometimes attack before your enemy is a strong set of fundamentals for a tank in general run-of-the-mill PvE. Whenever I say that, I usually mean story and time rifts, stuff like that. For PvP, she still doesn't get used a lot in PvP, even with Bernhard bringing Empire back into the meta, mainly because she's not Hilda, or Jugler, or Landius, or Albedo. If you're missing one of those key tanks, then she can plug a gap for you, I guess. For availability, Emilia is coming back in November on a slightly updated version of this banner alongside Licorice and Cherie. Alright, let's move along to Rozenciel. Rozenciel is a meta-dominant anti-debuff healer. Whenever she uses a skill on an ally, she dispels a debuff and gives up to 3 stacks of a barrier buff that can soak up the next incoming debuff. Each character can stack up to 5 of these barriers at a time, and it's tough to eat through them all at once, but it is possible. Whenever an ally ends their turn within range of Rozenciel, a range dictated by her star level, they also get some healing and an additional barrier stack. Her 3-cost skill is essentially a transformation skill. It heals allies within range, and gives them a couple turns of Tiara-style post-battle healing, and it turns Rozenciel into an immobile crystal beacon. While she's in this state, she can't move or attack or use skills, but she gets increased healing, increased range for her auto-healing talent, and she can revive if she's killed. She does have a couple of big range healing skills to help her take advantage of her talent. She has Miracle and Mass Crystal Heal, which heals up front and gives some delayed healing as well. She's a member of Princess Alliance, buffed by Luna, Shelfaniel, and Christiane, Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhard, Leon, Lance, and Rozenciel, and Mythical Realm, buffed by Gizaroth and the Sage of the Trees. Her faction buff for Empire's Honor increases damage dealt when you're actively attacking by 12%, and causes anyone who attacks you to lose one of their buffs before combat. For bonds, she unlocks both the attack and defensive bonds for Clotaire, and for her own bonds she needs Clotaire for her attack bond and Lanford for her defensive bond. So if you just pulled Clotaire on the last banner, then Rozenciel's your ticket to fully unlocking him. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Leviar and Valkyrie in the Eternal Temple, and she's actually a strong meta pick now for Sleipnir and Nidhogg in Ancient Beckoning. She's especially dominant against Nidhogg with all the post-battle healing she can provide for your team in the slime phase. Essentially, every time one of the slimes blows up and hits your team with that AoE, they'll all get some mass crystal healing after every AoE. It's great. Of course, her main purpose is to swing the balance of power in PvP. There are a lot of AoE debuffs out there right now, and Rozenciel is pretty much the top counter to those. Unfortunately, that does mean she's going to be getting banned a lot, and Rozenciel alone isn't enough to counter Kruger, Bozel, and Reen all at the same time, but she is going to really throw a wrench into their plans. Overall, even if you're not facing a team that relies strictly on debuffs, she's just a prolific healer and a pretty powerful option, which is always helpful. Okay, for availability, Rozenciel should be coming back in late September on a raid-up banner alongside Kruger. Finally, let's move on to Licorice. Licorice is an interesting blend of a support unit and a healer and an AoE damage dealer. Whenever she casts an AoE skill, and this includes her heals, every tile within the span of the skill gets a Breath of Life effect for up to 2 turns at 6 star. When a friendly unit lands on one of these tiles, it heals them and dispels a debuff. She also has a 1-cost transformation skill that reverses her terrain effect, instead causing damage and debuffs to enemies who land on the affected tiles. To help cover as much terrain as possible, she also has a large AoE 3-cost skill. It's a big 5-span burst centered on Licorice that heals allies within the zone and inflicts damage and debuffs on enemies. She does have a unique helmet coming out soon as well that should be coming to global servers in August, and this helm essentially allows her to work as a full healer. It gives plus 10% HP like a Tenyo's headdress, and it makes it so that as long as you're under the effect of a faction buff, then whenever you end your turn, as long as you haven't dealt damage, all your skills get an extra cooldown. So you can cast like a healing spell, and then have it immediately cooled down for the next turn. Anyway, she's a member of Princess Alliance, buffed by Luna, Shelfaniel, and Christiane, Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozel and Licorice, and Langrisser Reincarnation, buffed by Ares and Hilda. So she does have one of the faction buffs for Dark Reincarnation, and this one increases skill damage by 3% for each tick of cooldown that the skill has, up to a maximum of 20% for a skill with a cooldown of 7. Most big skills like Black Hole have a cooldown of 5, so you're usually going to be getting up to 15% bonus damage with this. For bonds, she unlocks the defensive bonds for Renata and Lucretia, and the attack bonds for Florentia and Patsir. For her own bonds, she needs Ares and Bozel. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Leviar in the Eternal Temple, and Nidhogg and Fenrir and Sleipnir in Ancient Beckoning. In PvP, she's still an excellent choice as an off-healer for your team. She has great factions right now, and she actually finds a more comfortable place in the meta in Season 8 when that comes around. She's getting a lot of use in China as a main healer right now. For availability, Licorice is coming back in November on a slightly updated version of this banner alongside Emilia and Cherie. Either they thought Rozenciel was too OP to dump onto a Destiny banner on a recurring basis, or they wanted to give people another chance to pick up Cherie once her SP stone is on offer. In case they don't already have her, I guess. It happens. Okay, so here's the quick and dirty. We have Emilia, who's a self-reviving tank who converts her magic defense to her attack, and she has a ranged counterattack. We have Rozenciel, who is a meta-dominant healer with very strong debuff protection. She carries a faction buff for Empire's Honor, and she unlocks the attack and defensive bonds for Clotaire. And we have Licorice, who is a support and utility healer with oppressive terrain effects. She carries one of the faction buffs for Dark Reincarnation, and she unlocks the defensive bonds for Renata and Lucretia, and the attack bonds for Florentia and Patsir. Now, unless you're on a budget or you have your summons for the next few weeks tightly planned, I do highly recommend summoning on this banner with the intent to dodge Emilia. Rozenciel is simply too important a unit for the foreseeable future in PvP and for multiple fights in Ancient Beckoning, and Licorice does come back into her own in the next season with some great gear upgrades, so they're both valuable additions. Okay, now for the usual reminder about upcoming banners. Next week, we should actually be getting 2 Destiny banners. One is an old classic featuring Lana, Rachel, and Tiaris, and the other is a new classic featuring Lanford, Shelfaniel, and Virash. The week after that is the next major update featuring the new version of Rainforce, the King of Crimsonia, and Sissy White. Halfway through that new character banner, we should also be getting the return of our annual Valentine trade-in event banners. This year we've got Luna and Dheart on one, and Werner and Rozelia on the other. These banners are a pretty generous way to get one or the other character. Unlike the normal space-time essence trade-in mechanic, you get a trade token no matter who you summon, even if they're not already 6 stars. You can then trade 50 shards of one banner hero for 60 shards of the other, which is enough to actually summon them from scratch. The worst result is pulling an off banner, since you'd still get the trade token but no actual shards to make the trade, unless you save some up beforehand. The trade tokens can be used on either banner, so if, for example, if you save up 50 Dheart shards in advance, and then summon on the Rozelia and Werner banner, take whoever you get, you can keep that new unit, and then go trade your Dheart shards for Luna. It's something to consider planning for, depending on what you need. Alright, that's it for this episode. I hope you found this video and these summaries helpful. Please go ahead and let me know in the comments if you plan on summoning here, and if you have a Destiny guarantee lined up, and if you have great luck or terrible luck. It's a great place to vent. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon. Extra special thanks, of course, to our Langrisser tier channel members Levitt, Derek Gunderson, Kyle Greer-Brown, and William Householder, as well as all of our Gold tier members for your generous support. Thank you so much.